And now we can talk to Stephen Kinnock, voted Remain, but is against a second referendum, Labour MP. And thanks for joining us. And general election, you're asked to vote on it. Prime Minister will have to get 2/3 of you to support it in order for it to happen. Will you vote for it?
I think there's a number of steps here. The first is we have to push as hard as we can for the legislation and to get it through. We don't know the timing of Boris Johnson trying to call an election, so we've got to push ahead with that. That's plan A. If he comes out and says, right, we're going to have a general election because he can see that the government's going to lose on this legislation, I think we should immediately table a vote of no confidence. If none of that works and we end up going ahead with the general election that Boris Johnson is proposing, I think that puts Labour in a difficult position because, of course, it is the duty of Her Majesty's loyal opposition to oppose and to seek a general election. On the other hand, it can't be used as just a way of facilitating no deal. Right. So my sense is if the Prime Minister proposes a general election, the date of polling day is crucial.
Would you take his word if he said, I'm proposing October the 10th? So that is in good time for October the 31st. And there's time indeed. There's a European Council on the 17th of October. So there's time to sort it all out after the election. I'm proposing it's October the 10th. Would you take his word? Because some people have said, he might change his mind and then make it November, something in November after Parliament MPs have voted for it.
I think, I don't trust this government as far as I could throw them. What I would want to see is absolute clarity in terms of the way that this is proposed, if this is the road that Boris Johnson decides to go down, and it certainly looks like it will as soon as he can see that he's going to lose the anti-no deal vote. What assurances can he give that if he sets 10th of October, that really is set in stone? And if we're not convinced, it needs to be first half of October. Otherwise, it's clearly just a kind of a sneaky way of pushing no deal through.
Tony Blair made a speech today in which he said the problem with the general election option for people of his mindset is that Boris Johnson is going to win it.
Look, Evan, in terms of, I know that our constitution is being turned on its head on a regular basis these days, but it is the constitutional duty of Her Majesty's loyal opposition to seek a general election and to oppose. And I know we're in extraordinary times. I think that where we clearly should not support a general election is if it is a back channel to delivering no deal. And the outrage of having a general election which actually just facilitates no deal is not on.
No, I understand. But you're not scared of Boris Johnson winning the election, getting a Conservative majority, and then taking us to a no-deal Brexit? Because obviously at that point, it would be, as far as you're concerned, a much more electorally legitimate strategy than you think it is now.
I think we have to believe that we, as the opposition, would be in a position to win a general election and to ensure that we get that extension, and then I hope leave the European Union with a deal. But that, of course, is going to be a matter for Jeremy Corbyn to decide how he whips us. But let's be absolutely clear: it isn't going to look very clear to the British people if the Prime Minister of the day is proposing a general election and the Leader of the Opposition is opposing it without a very, very good reason for doing so.
Is not the real problem for the anti-no dealers, yourself, people like Nick Bowles, who we heard this morning, many others, isn't it that you are not at one? And as Tony Blair put it today, the Remain vote will be split between the Lib Dems and Labour. And Boris Johnson stands a very good chance of sweeping up almost all of the Leave vote. And in that situation, he gets it and you don't.
Possibly, although you could also say that the pro-Brexit vote is split between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party if we have a general election whilst we're still a member state of the European Union. So that I think cuts both ways. I think that it would be much, much better for Labour to have a general election after we've left the European Union, because we need to get back to the bread and butter issues that we did so well on in 2017. But it's also vital that we leave with a deal. I think the purpose of the extension should be exclusively in order to secure a deal based on the withdrawal agreement bill. Don't forget how hard we pushed Theresa May to reach out. She reached out in the end, far too late, but nevertheless did. There were cross-party talks, produced major concessions to Labour. I think that was a very good deal, and I think it's a tragedy that Parliament never had the opportunity to debate or vote on the withdrawal agreement bill.
But Stephen, what is your backstop, to use the word? What is your backstop? I mean, suppose we have an election and we have another Parliament like this one. It's not inconceivable we'll end up with another hung Parliament, and it won't resolve it. I mean, you've been very against going back to the people in a referendum. At that stage, will you say, OK, obviously this election business isn't working to sort it out. We better go back to the people in a referendum of some kind and give them some different Brexit options and maybe a Remain option and let them choose it?
I think if we win the general election, we have to be absolutely clear, in what we do then, and are we going to go to Brussels to negotiate a better Labour deal, but then put that deal to the people? Are we then going to campaign against the deal that we've just negotiated with Brussels? It isn't clear to me what the position going into the manifesto is. That's why it is by far the best option is to leave the European Union on the basis of the withdrawal agreement bill. When you think about the backstop, I think there's a maximum of 70 members of Parliament who are opposed to the backstop. I have no problem with the backstop. There are vast numbers of Tory MPs who voted for the backstop. Let's bring that withdrawal agreement bill forward.
Hang on, what are you saying? You didn't vote for the deal, did you? On the 3 occasions? You were offered a deal, you didn't vote for it. When the history of this is written, aren't you going to be the ones who look like the ones who didn't know what they were doing? I mean, Bill Cash knew what he was doing. He wanted a no-deal Brexit.
No.
And Caroline Lucas knows what she's doing. She wants another referendum. You're the one who's sitting here saying, why can't we have a deal? And who voted against the deal.
Evan, as I said earlier, the 3 meaningful vote deals were a blind Brexit. They were a Tory Brexit with no clarity at all on the future relationship. We pushed Theresa May to reach out. Finally, she did. We had the cross-party talks, which delivered a number of concessions: a customs union until the general election, dynamic alignment on environmental and consumer rights, a bill on workers' rights, and even an undertaking to have a binding vote in Parliament on whether the whole thing should be put to a referendum at committee stage. The tragedy is that we had a knee-jerk reaction to that, said no, having engaged in the talks for 6 weeks, we then pulled away. That, of course, was the end for Theresa May, because her party moved against her then, and we ended up putting the future of the country in the hands of 160,000 Tory no-dealers. So what I'm saying is that there's the withdrawal agreement bill and the withdrawal agreement that was the basis of the meaningful votes are 2 very different kettles of fish.
Stephen Kinnock, thanks for joining us.